Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm Lee Anderson, the Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield, and joining me today on the show, we've got the Editor-at-Large of the Mail on Sunday. That's the very ever youthful, very beautiful Charlotte Griffiths, and the fossil of politics. He's back, he's left in the corner. That's Stephen Pound. Mind you, he's looking very, very brown. Have you been in the allotment, Stephen?
Oh, I have. It's a very busy time on the allotment. My parsnips are just finally breaking the soil and emerging into
We
the
don't
sunlight.
want to know about your parsnips.
Well, mate, you should see my marrows. I've just actually plucked my first marrows.
It's the old carry-on humour coming out again with Stephen Pound. But look, serious business. Grooming gangs again have been in the news this week, guys. We've seen the KC report. Big, thick wedge, actually. I'm only halfway through it. But the big question is this national inquiry, is it going to be another cover-up, Stephen?
I don't think so. I mean, I know Louise Casey, and I remember when she did the Rough Sleepers investigation about 20-odd years ago. You know, she takes no prisoners. But look, the key thing here about this is we've had the Alexis J report, which, as you know, was for about 5 years, had 22 recommendations in the previous government, none of which were actually implemented. What Louise Casey has done in two areas is completely groundbreaking. Firstly, she's actually said that there are occasions when some of the abusers are actually people who are asylum seekers. That's never been said before. The second important thing is that when she started this report, she said, I don't see any need for a national inquiry. The more she saw, the more she had to read, and the more she heard from the victims, she changed her mind. And that's why I think Keir Starmer and now most people are saying there has to be the national inquiry, but there have to be prosecutions. Somebody, somewhere is going to have to pay for this.
Charlotte?
I agree that she's basically a ball breaker, and I think she'll really get to grips with it. But I do think 3 years is possibly a bit too long. She could have made it 2 years. I never underestimate the government's capacity for a cover-up, to be honest. This is my worry. The fact she's involved does instill confidence in me, I have to say.
Stephen, I look at politics on a national and local level, and I think there's some current councillors up to their necks in it. I think you look at some of these towns, which, let's be honest, most of them were Labour-controlled towns with Labour mayors. Some of those Labour councillors who were in charge at the time of these councils, I could think of two that are now MPs in that place I work at, and they could be up to their necks in it as well. So I'll put it to you again. Do you think they might cover it up?
I don't think they will. I think people will try. But Lee, here's an important thing. You weren't in the House with Anne Cryer. Anne Cryer was the Labour MP for Keighley. She raised this issue nearly 20 years ago, and she got excoriated for it. People are abusing her and calling her racist. Sarah Champion in Rotherham, the same thing. She got abused left, right and centre. We owe an apology to those people who blew the whistle, and we owe some jail time to those people who let down those vulnerable girls.
Well, I agree with that, Stephen. But Charlotte, we see I was in the statement, Yvette Cooper statement earlier this week, and I asked the Yvette Cooper a question. I thought it was a reasonable question. I want Maggie Oliver to be chairing this inquiry. But it was interesting that the Labour MPs kept getting up and saying, I welcome this inquiry. These are the same Labour MPs that voted against an inquiry.
I know, the hypocrisy is staggering, isn't it? But I think that's the thing. I think this Casey report has stunned them all. I think what you were saying about the asylum seekers is right. In terms of a cover-up, I think they might cover up that, because what does it say? It says that multiculturalism has failed. And that's something they just cannot admit to. It's just a really difficult thing for the Labour Party to admit to. And yet there it all was in black and white, and they had no choice but to just sort of own up to it.
Yeah, it opens a broader debate, Stephen, this does. Multiculturalism, has it failed in this country?
Well, obviously it hasn't failed. I mean, there's no question. Yeah, we live in a multicultural society, and 99% of us rub along with our neighbours perfectly well and perfectly happily. There are a few people who actually bring the whole thing into disrepute, and they should be called out. The real embarrassment here is those people that are sort of cringing, loosely scoffing liberals who actually feel that they've got to actually excuse absolutely everything, that they say that multiculturalism is the get-out-of-jail-free card and everything.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic and let's be grown up. We get on with our neighbours, regardless of their faith, their ethnicity or anything, in by and large. But a couple of people, let's not make excuses and let's not cover them up.
Well, there are 50 different towns here, 50. And nearly all the girls are white. So that doesn't instill confidence in multiculturalism to me.
At all, is it?
And it kind of shows a disdain for white girls. So I just think that doesn't
And
make
let's
sense.
not forget the great work that Charlie Peters did on this, for GBNews. If it wasn't for him, we would not be having this conversation now. But why couldn't the authorities have done that?
I think they couldn't face up to it. And it's so instilled in our culture now to just turn a blind eye to anything that's uncomfortable. And anything that could be deemed far right. But, that's just been incredibly embarrassing now in the light of things.
Yeah, but Lee, the Alexis J report, actually, as I said, made 22 recommendations. And that came in back in the late 20s. Not a single one of those was implemented. They should have been implemented because that included a pulling together of all the local... Don't forget, Rochdale had their inquiry. Rotherham,
I agree with that, Stephen. I agree with that.
All got to be pulled together.
This report, it was given to the Home Secretary and the PM 10 days before she made a statement in the House on Monday morning, just gone. Just enough time for Sir Keir Starmer to slip off to Canada and hide behind an edge.
Come on, Lee, don't be...
Listen, 10 days to read a report.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous, Steve. I mean, I've read half of it. It took me about a couple of hours.
I'm sorry.
To digest it.
He's having to come to the G7 to try to negotiate a trade deal which would actually make a vast difference to every man, woman and child in this country. I'm sorry, he read the report, but then he had to have it read also by Yvette Cooper and also to actually go... I have to say, from what I hear, a lot he looked at and he said, is this really the case? And he actually wanted some double sourcing.
Was it just convenient for him to go to Canada?
Of course it's not convenient.
Drop Yvette Cooper.
Years ago.
The thing is, Casey's gone around doing a press sort of tour this week, hasn't she? Saying that she feels rage for these victims. So actually, while he was out of the country, she was doing a really good job of holding him to account. Yeah. And I expect that if we do find there's been a cover-up, she will do all those rounds again. And she'll go around saying, look, I'm on the side of the victims. The victims have confidence in her, which I think is really, really important. And they do think that there might be some measures that are implemented before the end of the report in 3 years. I think it's great that it's not going to go on indefinitely, but they need to take action as soon as possible.
Would it give the victims more encouragement, Stephen, if Maggie Oliver was chairing this inquiry?
Who knows? I mean, let's ask the victims. The voice of the victims has not been heard often enough, in my opinion. I'd actually ask them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the victims, we see them now coming out, and I actually met some... I've met one of the victims at the rally we did in Chester, and the story she told, and there was a father of one of the victims as well who went looking for his daughter when she'd been kidnapped, and he got arrested. I mean, these police should go to prison.
I think a lot of these girls got arrested as well for loitering and all sorts of things. And Casey's very much into the idea of reviewing all of those criminal.
Well, don't forget, one of the things in the Casey report, and I have to say, it makes very, very uncomfortable reading. When a police officer says that a 10-year-old girl is sexually promiscuous, and that somehow excuses it.
And then we hear some of the people on the left of politics, they say, well, there's far more white grooming gangs than there is Pakistan. Yeah, that's maybe true because, the white population is much higher in the country than men of Pakistani heritage. But the thing is, Stephen, is the cover-up.
Yeah. Well, no, Lee, I don't want to disagree with you. I don't think it's even the cover-up. I think it's the ignoring.
Well, it is. That is a cover-up.
Yeah. Well, OK, but the fact is, when you've got a young girl goes to the police station and says what's happening to her, and the police officer says, oh, come on, you've had too much to drink, love, off you go. Yeah. I'm sorry, that is culpable. And that police officer should be actually given the tin tack there and then. Yeah. But there's so many of these people who've got away with it for years. And if anything comes out of Casey report, I think we're going to have to actually pin that on them because this must never happen again. Lee, it may be happening today.
It is happening today, Steve.
Well, if it is happening today, what the hell are we doing about it?
Well, that's the thing. It's all taking... Even 3 years is too long, I think, because they've got to take action now, immediately. It's like the boats. It's like, you don't just talk about it.
So why the hell didn't the government implement the J report? Why on earth did they sit on it? Why did they ignore that? The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, the previous government, not your people, not my people, they sat on it and did nothing.
But why is it, Charlotte, that in these areas, I'll say it again, the Labour areas got Labour MPs, Labour councils, they have been very reluctant to speak about it. We had one of the Labour MPs in Parliament this week, Sean Davis, not here to defend himself, by the way, but I think he was the leader of Rochdale Council at the time, and I think he actually turned down the chance to have an inquiry into child grooming gangs in his town, and then is bleating on in Parliament to say that he wanted one.
But that was so embarrassing.
As you know, he was then overruled by Jim McMahon, and they did have an inquiry in Rochdale. However, it was a limited inquiry, and it did not have powers to compel people to give evidence. That's the difference. What the Alexis J report said, that government should have the power to actually compel people to give evidence, to actually shine the light on them. They've been hiding in the dark for too long.
Also, in the previous reports, all the data was mixed up. So yes, there were white people who were involved, but they weren't organised grooming gangs. That was different types of abuse. Still very bad, but different kind of abuse. So, and then obviously so much of the data hasn't been recorded about their ethnicity. And back to your earlier point, I mean, this has been widely reported, but the sad fact is, in the Labour areas, they don't want to lose the Muslim vote. And you know, there is a strong link between...
And that is the point, Stephen. That is the point. A lot of these MPs, Labour MPs, they're frightened to death of losing that vote, that Muslim vote.
Lee, how many Muslim MPs have actually won their seats against Labour? Yeah, Labour has no longer got the Muslim vote, mate. Don't try to fool yourself about that. Honestly, to think that we're going to bend over to try to get back after Palestine, after all those issues, forget it.
Final word, Charlotte.
I just think this is a very unedifying and embarrassing moment all round, and action needs to be taken immediately.
This, Stephen, guys, has been a dark stain on our country.
Absolutely.
And there's countries around the world looking at us at the moment and thinking, what the hell are you playing at in that supposedly great country of yours? We need to sort it out. And I said it when Robbie Moore did a German debate on grooming gangs in Keighley, where he represented the Tory MP. Councillors, MPs, social services, police, anybody involved in the cover-up should be locked up and sent to jail.